Billionaire gave 6 black credit cards to test 6 women. What the janitor bought left him speechless. She finished the conference room in a daze, her thoughts churning. Richard Calloway wanted to test loyalty with unlimited money. The same man who probably spent more on lunch than she made in a month was going to hand her a credit card and watch what she did with it. Have you ever been invisible in plain sight? When someone treated you like furniture until they needed something? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. She scrubbed floors at 2 a.m. while million-dollar deals were signed above her head. Until the night she accidentally overheard a conversation that would change 6 women's lives forever. The city lights painted geometric patterns across the marble floors as Denise Turner moved through the penthouse like a ghost. Unseen, unheard, but absorbing every secret these walls held. For 3 years, she'd cleaned Richard Calloway's offices after midnight. When the boardroom battles ended in Manhattan's most powerful hotel, owner finally went home. Tonight felt different. His voice carried through the cracked door of his private office, sharp with frustration. I can't trust anyone anymore, Marcus. The Henderson deal fell through because someone leaked our offer. My own board members are questioning my judgment. Even Amanda. His voice trailed off, heavy with doubt. Denise paused, her cleaning cart suddenly too loud in the silence. She shouldn't be listening, but something in his voice, vulnerability she'd never heard before, made her freeze. I need to know who's really loyal. Not to my money or my status, but to me as a person. There has to be a way to test that. Her cloth moved in slow circles across the glass conference table, each swipe buying her another moment of this forbidden glimpse into his world. Richard Calloway. The man whose empire stretched across 3 continents, whose face graced magazine covers, whose presence commanded rooms full of powerful people, sounded lost. 6 women, he continued, voice gaining strength. 6 different women from different parts of my life. Give them each unlimited access to money for 48 hours. See what they do with it. What they choose will tell me everything I need to know about who they really are. Denise's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd worked around wealthy people long enough to know their games, their tests, their cruel entertainment. But this felt different, desperate. She noticed his strong hands when he gestured during late-night phone calls, the way his shoulders carried weight that money couldn't ease. Despite their different worlds, she'd always felt an odd awareness of his presence. The way he said goodnight Denise on the rare occasions their paths crossed, like he actually saw her as a person, not furniture. But she was fooling herself. Men like Richard Calloway didn't notice women like her except to sign their paychecks. Make a list, he told Marcus. Amanda, obviously. Claire from college. Jessica, my childhood friend. That model, Sophia, from the charity event. Rebecca from the office. And he paused so long Denise thought the call had ended. Add Denise Turner, the night janitor. The cloth slipped from her fingers, hitting the floor with a soft thud that seemed to echo like thunder. Have you ever been invisible in plain sight? When someone treated you like furniture until they needed something? Drop a comment if you felt unseen. As she bent to retrieve the cloth, her mind raced. Why would he include her? She barely existed in his world. A quiet shadow who emptied trash and polished surfaces while his real life happened around her. She finished the conference room in a daze, her thoughts churning. Richard Calloway wanted to test loyalty with unlimited money. The same man who probably spent more on lunch than she made in a month was going to hand her a credit card and watch what she did with it. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent years watching wealthy people throw money at problems, buy affection, purchase loyalty. Now he wanted to see if money would reveal truth. But what truth could her choices possibly reveal to him? That she'd pay off her student loans? Fix her car? Maybe help her neighbor with her medical bills? As she emptied his wastebasket, a crumpled note fell out, 6 women's names written in his handwriting. Her name was there at the bottom, but unlike the others, it had a question mark beside it. Her heart stopped when she realized why. The other 5 women moved in his world of designer clothes and charity galas. They belonged in penthouse conference rooms and exclusive restaurants. But her? She was the question mark. The wild card. The one choice that didn't make sense to anyone, including herself. The elevator doors closed behind her at 3 a.m., but sleep wouldn't come. Tomorrow, Richard Calloway would look directly at her for probably the first time in 3 years and offer her something that could change her life forever. She just had no idea that in 48 hours, she'd be the one changing his. The richest man in Manhattan was about to discover that money doesn't reveal character. It exposes the mask people wear to hide it. The penthouse living room buzzed with designer perfume and nervous energy as 6 women from different worlds sat on Italian leather, each holding a card that could buy them anything or reveal everything. Denise felt like an imposter in her best dress, a navy blue number from Target that she'd worn to her cousin's wedding 2 years ago. Around her, the other women looked like they'd stepped from magazine pages. Amanda, Richard's fiancée, wore diamonds that caught the morning light like captured stars. Claire, his college ex, had that effortless elegance that came from growing up wealthy. Jessica radiated the confidence of old friendship, while Sophia, the model, was stunning enough to stop traffic. Rebecca, his personal assistant, looked polished and professional in a way that spoke of expensive education and careful grooming. Then there was Denise, the janitor. Richard entered the room like he owned not just the penthouse but the entire city below. His presence filled the space, commanding attention without demanding it. When his eyes swept across the group, they lingered on her longer than the others, and she felt an unexpected flutter in her chest. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice carrying that authority she'd heard through office doors for years. "I'm sure you're wondering why you're here." Denise noticed how his hands moved when he spoke, strong, decisive gestures that matched his voice. She'd observed him from a distance for so long that being this close felt surreal, like stepping inside a movie she'd only watched from the lobby. "Each of you represents a different part of my life. Some of you I've known for years, others more recently. But I realized recently that I don't really know any of you at all." Amanda shifted in her seat, diamond bracelet catching light as she reached for her coffee. "Darling, what are you talking about? Loyalty, truth, character, the things that matter when everything else falls away." He pulled 6 identical black credit cards from his jacket pocket. "I'm giving each of you unlimited spending power for exactly 48 hours. No restrictions, no questions asked. What you choose to buy will tell me who you really are." The room fell silent, except for the soft whisper of filtered air and distant traffic far below. Claire laughed, a sound like crystal breaking. "Are you serious? This is some kind of test." "Everything is a test," Richard replied, his gaze steady. "The question is whether we pass or fail." Sophia examined her card like it might bite her. "Unlimited? Really unlimited? Really unlimited?" Rebecca, ever practical, asked, "What's the catch?" "No catch. Spend as you wish. Buy what calls to you. Help whoever you want to help. The only rule is that in 48 hours, we meet back here, and you tell me what you chose and why." Denise turned the card over in her fingers, the black plastic warm from Richard's touch. It felt heavier than it should, weighted with possibility and danger in equal measure. "Sir," she said softly, using the formal address that had been their only connection for 3 years. "Why me?" The other women looked at her like they'd just noticed she was there. Amanda's perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched in a way that suggested she was wondering the same thing. But Richard's answer came without hesitation. "Because I want to know if goodness exists when no one's watching. If you had unlimited money for 48 hours, what would you buy first? Be honest. Luxury for yourself or help for others? Tell me in the comments." The words hit Denise like a physical force. He saw her as good, not invisible, not insignificant good. The man whose approval she'd never thought to seek had been watching her all along, seeing something in her that she'd never named herself. As the meeting broke up and the women began to leave, clutching their black cards like tickets to dreams they'd never dared voice, Denise found herself hesitating at the elevator. The other 5 women chattered excitedly about possibilities, spa days and shopping sprees, jewelry and vacations. Their voices faded as the elevator carried them down to street level, leaving Denise alone with Richard in the hallway. "Sir," she said again, then caught herself. After what he just said, the formal distance felt wrong. "Richard, I need to ask you something." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something clean and expensive that suited him. "What is it?" "Why me?" "Really? I clean your floors. I empty your trash. I'm nobody in your world." His hand reached out, stopping just short of touching her face. The almost contact made her breath catch. "That's where you're wrong, Denise. You're the only person in my world who's never wanted anything from me, never asked for favors, never tried to impress me, never treated me differently because of my money. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" The elevator dinged, arriving to take her back to her regular life. But as she stepped inside, his words followed her down 42 floors. "Because I want to know if goodness exists when no one's watching." She spent the subway ride home staring at the black card, wondering what her choices would reveal to him and to herself. Within 6 hours, 5 women were maxing out luxury boutiques, while 1 woman was researching children's hospitals. And Richard Calloway was about to learn which choice would save his soul. While Amanda posed with diamond necklaces in Tiffany's and Sophia test drove Maseratis in Miami, Denise sat in her 1-bedroom apartment with medical bills spread across her kitchen table. Not her own, but strangers she'd found through hospital charity programs. Her laptop screen glowed with research she'd been conducting for hours. St. Jude Children's Hospital payment portals, local family medical funds, community assistance programs she'd discovered through her volunteer work at the shelter. The black card lay beside her mouse pad, untouched but heavy with possibility. Meanwhile, across the city, Amanda was creating a scene at Bergdorf Goodman that would be talked about for weeks. "Charge it all," she declared, waving the black card at the bewildered sales associate. "Every piece of jewelry in that case." "Yes, all of it." In Miami, Sophia had attracted a crowd at the Ferrari dealership. The red convertible she was signing papers for cost more than most people's houses, but her Instagram was already exploding with photos of her new baby. Claire had taken a more sophisticated approach, booking herself into the most expensive spa in California for a week-long retreat that included personal chefs, private yoga instructors, and treatments involving actual gold leaf. Rebecca, practical even in excess, had booked first-class tickets to 5 different countries, planning the kind of world tour she'd dreamed about since college. But Denise couldn't stop thinking about Marcus, the homeless veteran who came to the shelter every Tuesday for dinner. Last week, he'd mentioned needing surgery for a service-related injury, but couldn't afford it. She found his name in the hospital's charity care database. Her phone rang, making her jump. Richard's name appeared on the screen. "Denise? I hope I'm not bothering you." His voice was deeper than she'd ever heard it, intimate in a way that made her pulse quicken. "No, not at all. I wanted to check on your progress." She looked at the medical bills scattered across her table, at the charity websites still open on her laptop, at the black card that represented more money than she could imagine. "I'm still deciding," she said, which wasn't exactly a lie. "Take your time. There's no pressure." But there was pressure, not from him, but from her own heart. Every minute she waited was another minute someone suffered needlessly. "Richard," she used his first name deliberately this time, testing how it felt. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "When you were growing up, did you ever have to choose between eating and paying rent?" Silence stretched between them, long enough that she wondered if she'd overstepped. "Yes," he said finally. "More times than I care to remember. My mother worked 3 jobs just to keep us housed. I swore that if I ever had enough money, no one around me would have to make that choice." "Then you understand." "Understand what?" She looked at Marcus's hospital bill, at the fund for the single mother whose daughter needed heart surgery, at the community college scholarship fund that was $500 short of helping a young woman escape poverty through education. "Why this is the hardest decision I've ever had to make. What's more attractive? Someone who buys you diamonds, or someone who uses their blessings to heal the world? Which type of person are you?" "Share below." After they hung up, Denise sat in her quiet apartment for another hour. Through her thin walls, she could hear her neighbor's baby crying. The same baby whose mother worked double shifts at the diner, but still couldn't afford the pediatric care her daughter needed. At 11:47 p.m., Denise opened her laptop and began typing. The first transfer was to St. Jude Children's Hospital, $50,000 for their general fund. The second was to Marcus, $25,000 for his surgery and recovery. The third was to her neighbor, $15,000 for the baby's medical care. Each keystroke felt like a small revolution, like she was reshaping the world one life at a time. By midnight, she transferred nearly $200,000 to various charities and individuals, but she hadn't bought a single thing for herself. Not new clothes, not a better apartment, not even the decent mattress she'd been saving for. Her phone buzzed with a bank alert confirming the transfers. Then it buzzed again with a text from Richard. "Everything okay? I got unusual activity alerts on your card." She stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. "Everything's perfect." Finally, 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, "Thank you." She wasn't sure what he was thanking her for, but as she finally fell asleep on her lumpy mattress in her tiny apartment, she realized she felt richer than she ever had in her life. At midnight, Richard's phone buzzed with an alert that made him sit up in bed. Denise had just transferred $50,000 to St. Jude Children's Hospital. She hadn't bought a single thing for herself. She flew across 3 states not to shop, but to save. And with each anonymous donation, she was unknowingly buying something priceless, a billionaire's heart. The homeless shelter in Atlanta welcomed her like family as she handed the director a check that would keep them running for months, her eyes bright with tears she tried to hide. Denise had never flown first class before, had barely flown at all, but Richard had insisted on upgrading her ticket when she called to explain her plan. "If you're going to change lives," he'd said, "you might as well be comfortable doing it." Now, standing in the shelter where she'd once spent 3 desperate weeks as a teenager, she felt the strange circle of her life completing itself. Miss Turner, the director, Mrs. Washington, said with disbelief, This is incredible. Do you know how many families this will help?" Denise looked around at the familiar walls, the donated furniture, the hopeful faces of people who'd run out of options. She'd been one of those faces once, sleeping on a cot, and wondering if things would ever get better. "I know exactly," she said softly. Her phone buzzed constantly with bank alerts as she moved through her mission. $30,000 to the Detroit school, where she'd volunteered during college, enough to buy every student new textbooks and supplies. $25,000 to the Chicago Community Center, where she'd learned to read better after aging out of foster care. $40,000 to various medical funds for families drowning in healthcare costs. Each stop brought tears, hugs, and disbelief. In Detroit, the principal actually sat down in his office and cried when she handed him a check. "We've been using textbooks from 1995, he said. "Our kids deserve better than hand-me-down knowledge." "Every child deserves to dream big," Denise replied, thinking of the teenagers she'd seen give up hope because no one had invested in their potential. But it was in Chicago, at the community center, where her carefully controlled emotions finally broke. She stood in the computer lab, where she'd spent countless hours after high school, teaching herself skills that would eventually lead to her janitorial job. Not glamorous work, but honest work that kept her independent. "Denise," a familiar voice made her turn. "Denise Turner, is that really you?" Ms. Rodriguez, her old mentor, stood in the doorway looking exactly the same as she had 15 years ago. "I heard someone was here asking about donations, but I never imagined." The older woman pulled her into a fierce hug. "Look at you. Look how far you've come." "Not that far," Denise said, but Ms. Rodriguez pulled back and studied her face. "Far enough to come back and lift others up. That's the farthest distance of all." The check she wrote to the center was the largest yet, $75,000 to fund their adult education and job training programs. Have you ever met someone whose kindness made you question everything about yourself? Someone who made you want to be better? Tell me about them below. It was while she was signing the paperwork in Chicago that Richard appeared in the doorway of the community center office. Denise looked up from the donation forms, and her breath caught. He stood there in his perfectly tailored suit, looking completely out of place among the donated furniture and motivational posters. But his eyes were fixed on her with an intensity that made her hand shake. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Following the most amazing woman I've ever met," he said simply. Ms. Rodriguez looked between them with knowing eyes, then quietly excused herself, leaving them alone in the small office. "You've been tracking my spending," Denise said, not accusingly but with understanding. "I've been watching you change the world, one life at a time." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the emotion in his eyes. "Do you know what the other women bought in their first 6 hours?" She shook her head. Amanda spent $180,000 on jewelry. Claire booked a spa retreat that costs more than most people make in a year. Sophia bought a car worth more than this entire building. He paused, his voice dropping. "And you haven't spent a penny on yourself." "I don't need anything," she said, but even as the words left her lips, she realized they weren't entirely true. Standing this close to him, seeing the way he looked at her like she was something precious, she was discovering needs she'd never acknowledged. "Everyone needs something, Denise. What do you need?" The question hung between them, loaded with meaning that had nothing to do with money or tests or credit cards. She thought about her cramped apartment, her secondhand clothes, her lonely dinners for one. Then she thought about Marcus getting his surgery, about those kids in Detroit getting new textbooks, about the families who wouldn't lose their homes because of medical bills. "I need to know that kindness matters more than wealth," she said. "I need to know that how we treat people who can't help us says more about our character than how we treat people who can." He reached out and touched her face this time, his palm warm against her cheek. "You already know that. You've known it your whole life. That's why He stopped himself, but she could see the words in his eyes. As they stood in the empty classroom, surrounded by new books and supplies, Richard reached for her hand. "Why?" he asked. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed. Amanda was calling with news that would change everything. While one woman was building hope, the others were tearing down the man who trusted them, and their betrayal would make her sacrifice mean everything. The exclusive Miami restaurant buzzed with whispered conspiracies as 3 women who should have protected Richard instead planned his downfall over champagne and caviar. Denise had returned to her hotel room in Chicago, exhausted but fulfilled after her day of giving, when Amanda's name flashed on her phone screen. She almost didn't answer. What could Richard's fiancée possibly want with her? "Denise? Thank God you picked up." Amanda's voice sounded breathless, excited in a way that immediately put Denise on alert. "Is everything okay? Is Richard?" "Richard's fine. Listen, I need to meet with you. Can you get to Miami tonight?" "Miami? Why would I?" "Trust me, it's important. It's about the test, about what he's really doing. There are things you need to know." Something in Amanda's tone made Denise's stomach clench. She'd learned long ago to trust her instincts about people, and right now, every instinct was screaming warning. But concern for Richard overrode caution. "What things?" "Not over the phone." "The Fontainebleau penthouse restaurant." Midnight. The line went dead, leaving Denise staring at her phone in confusion. She looked at the black card lying on her nightstand, the card that helped her change so many lives in just one day. What could Amanda possibly know that would require a secret midnight meeting? By the time she landed in Miami, her unease had grown into full-blown dread. The Fontainebleau's penthouse restaurant glittered with wealth and privilege, its floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the ocean under starlight. Denise felt underdressed in her simple black dress as she was led to a corner table where Amanda waited with 2 other women, Claire and Rebecca. "Denise." Amanda's smile was blindingly white and completely false. "So glad you can make it. Seat. The 3 women looked like they'd stepped from a fashion magazine. All perfect hair, designer clothes, and predatory smiles. Denise felt like a mouse walking into a trap. "What's this about?" she asked, remaining standing. "Richard," Claire said, swirling champagne in her glass. "And what he's really up to with this little test of his." "Which is?" Rebecca leaned forward conspiratorially. "He's planning to propose to one of us. The test isn't about loyalty. It's about finding his next wife." Denise's heart stopped. "His next wife?" "He's engaged to Amanda." Amanda laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Not for long. Our engagement is complicated. Business arrangement more than romance. But Richard's getting sentimental in his old age. He wants love, not just compatibility. He's testing us to see who's worthy, Claire added, seeing who has the character to be Mrs. Richard Calloway. The words hit Denise like physical blows. Of course, she'd been naive to think a man like Richard would notice her for any genuine reason. She was just another contestant in his wealthy man's game, another woman to be tested and discarded when she failed to measure up. That's not, she started, but Amanda cut her off. Oh, honey, did you think he actually cared about you? The janitor, she shared a look with Claire and Rebecca, and they all started laughing. Have you ever discovered that people you trusted were plotting against you? How did it feel to have an unexpected ally? Share your experience. But as their cruel laughter echoed across the restaurant, Denise noticed something that made her blood run cold. Rebecca's purse lay open on the table, and inside, she could see documents that looked suspiciously like Richard's private business contracts. The same letterhead, the same distinctive formatting she'd seen while cleaning his office. What are those papers? She asked quietly. Rebecca snapped her purse shut, but not before Denise caught sight of a familiar logo. Henderson Hotels, Richard's biggest competitor. The pieces clicked together with horrible clarity. This wasn't about finding Richard a wife. This was about destroying him. You're working for Henderson, she said, not a question, but a statement. Amanda's perfect composure slipped for just a moment, but it was enough. Smart girl, Claire said. Smarter than we expected. The test, the spending spree, it's all a distraction, Denise realized. While he's focused on us, you're stealing his business secrets. Among other things, Amanda said coolly. Did you really think I'd spent 2 years with that man without getting something valuable out of it? Rebecca pulled out her phone. The question is, what are we going to do about our little witness here? Denise's mind raced. She thought about Richard's vulnerability when he'd talked about not knowing who to trust, about his genuine surprise at her selfless spending, about the way he'd looked at her in that community center like she was something precious. He trusted these women. He'd included them in his inner circle, given them access to his life, his business, his heart, and they were planning to destroy him. I need to make a call, she said, backing toward the restaurant exit. I don't think so. Amanda stood, her designer heels clicking ominously on the marble floor. But Denise was already moving, her phone in her hand, Richard's number dialing as she ran for the elevator. He answered on the first ring. Denise? What's wrong? Richard, listen to me carefully. Don't trust Amanda. Don't trust any of them. They're working with Henderson Hotels. They're stealing from you. What? Where are you? Miami. They lured me here, try to make me think the test was about finding you a wife, but it's not. They're corporate spies, Richard. All of them. Silence stretched across the line. Then his voice, tight with controlled fury. Are you safe? I'm leaving now. But Richard, be careful. I don't think this is just about business anymore. As she hung up and stepped into the elevator, Denise didn't know that Amanda had seen her make the call. She didn't see the fiancé's smile turn razor-sharp as she dialed her lawyer. Change of plans, Amanda said into her phone. We need to eliminate all witnesses. The elevator doors closed just as Amanda's words echoed across the restaurant, but the danger was just beginning. Back in New York, Richard stared at his phone with growing horror, finally understanding that his test had revealed far more than he'd bargained for, and that the woman who'd spent her day saving strangers had just risked everything to save him. She saved his empire with a phone call and his heart with her presence. But the night he came to thank her, everything they thought they knew about boundaries would disappear. Her small apartment transformed with his presence, not because of his wealth, but because for the first time she saw him without his armor, sitting on her second-hand couch like he belonged there. Denise had barely made it back to New York when a knock came at her door. She looked through the peephole, and her heart stopped. Richard stood in her hallway at midnight, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his tie loosened, exhaustion written across his face. She opened the door, and he stepped inside without invitation, then just stood there looking at her like she was something impossible he was trying to understand. You saved me, he said simply. I made a phone call. You risked everything to warn me. What? The question hung between them in the small space of her living room. Her thrift store furniture suddenly seemed shabby next to his expensive suit, but he didn't seem to notice. He was looking at her like she was the most valuable thing in the room. Because you're a good man who deserves better than betrayal. How do you know I'm good? You barely know me. I've watched you for 3 years, Richard. I've seen how you treat people when you think no one's looking. You remember the security guard's daughter's name. You always say please and thank you to staff. You work 16-hour days, but still take calls from your employees when they need help. She paused, gathering courage. Good people don't have to perform goodness. It just flows out of them naturally. He moved closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. Do you know what I've discovered about the other women? She shook her head, not trusting her voice. Amanda was planning to clean out my accounts and disappear to Switzerland with my business secrets. Rebecca's been copying my files for months. Claire was recording our private conversations. His jaw tightened. The only person I can trust is someone I've been taking for granted for 3 years. You never took me for granted, didn't I? When's the last time I really looked at you? Really saw you as more than part of the scenery? The honesty in his voice broke something loose inside her chest. Tonight. You're seeing me tonight. When was the last time someone surprised you by seeing past your exterior to who you really are? That moment when masks come off? Share that feeling below. He reached up and touched her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone like she was made of something precious. You spent $250,000 helping strangers today. You flew across the country to warn me about a trap. You've never asked me for anything, never tried to impress me, never treated me like a bank account with legs. Because you're not. What am I then? The question was barely a whisper, but it filled her small apartment with possibility. You're the man who remembers my name, who works late because he cares about his employees, who created a test not because he's cruel, but because he's been hurt before and doesn't know who to trust. She stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. You're the man I've been falling for without realizing it, one late-night glimpse at a time. The kiss happened like gravity, inevitable, necessary, perfect. His lips were soft against hers, tentative at first, then hungry when she responded. Her hands found his chest, feeling his heart racing under expensive fabric. He tasted like coffee and possibility and 3 years of restrained longing finally set free. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. This changes everything, he whispered. I know, your job, the difference in our situations, what people will say. I don't care about any of that. You should. My world can be cruel to people who don't fit the mold. She pulled back to look at him directly. Then maybe it's time to change your world. As he held her against him, breathing in her warmth, his phone exploded with notifications. Amanda had just leaked their relationship to the press with a twisted story that would destroy them both. The headlines called her a gold digger and him a fool. But the real scandal was how wrong they all were about what love looks like when it's real. Camera flashes erupted like fireworks as they walked hand in hand through the hotel lobby, reporters shouting questions that tried to reduce their story to scandal when it was actually salvation. Mr. Calloway, is it true you're having an affair with your cleaning lady? How long has this been going on behind your fiancé's back? Miss Turner, what's it like to go from scrubbing floors to living in luxury? The questions hit like arrows, each one designed to wound. Denise felt Richard's hand tightening around hers, his jaw set in determination as they pushed through the crowd toward the elevator. No comment, he said firmly, his voice cutting through the chaos. But Amanda had done her work well. By morning, every tabloid in the city carried the story. The headlines were brutal. Billionaires made, from mop to millions. Rich man's rags to rich's romance or calculated con. Hotel heiress dumps cheating billionaire for two-timing with staff. They sat in Richard's office reading the coverage together, each story more twisted than the last. According to the press, Denise was a scheming opportunist who'd seduced her way out of poverty. Richard was a middle-aged fool having a midlife crisis with inappropriate workplace relationships. They don't know us, Denise said quietly, setting down the paper with shaking hands. No, they don't. But the damage might be done anyway. Richard's voice was tight, with controlled anger. My board is calling emergency meetings. 3 major investors have already pulled out. The stock price dropped 12% in one day. Because of me, because of lies and prejudice, and people who can't imagine that love might be more complex than their small minds can grasp. She stood up, pacing to the window that overlooked the city. Maybe I should resign? Disappear? Let things go back to normal for you? Denise. His voice was sharp enough to make her turn. Look at me. She did, and saw steel in his eyes that reminded her why he'd built an empire from nothing. I spent my entire adult life making decisions based on what other people thought was appropriate. Marrying Amanda because she fit the image. Staying engaged to her because breaking up would cause gossip. Playing it safe in business because bold moves might fail. He stood and crossed to her, taking her hands in his. You know what playing it safe got me? A fiancé who was robbing me blind, and a life that felt like wearing clothes that never quite fit. Have you ever been judged for loving someone society said you shouldn't? How did you handle the criticism? Were you stronger together or apart? But your business will survive. It survived worse than gossip. But what won't survive is me walking away from the best thing that's ever happened to me because I'm afraid of what people might say. They held a press conference that afternoon. Richard stood at the podium looking every inch the powerful businessman he was. But when he spoke, his words carried the weight of absolute truth. I want to address the recent speculation about my personal life. Yes, I'm in a relationship with Denise Turner. Yes, she worked for my company. No, there was nothing inappropriate about how our relationship developed. And no, I will not apologize for falling in love with a woman whose character surpasses anyone I've ever known. The questions came like machine gun fire, but Richard deflected them all with the same calm authority. Sir, what about your engagement to Amanda Wellington? Was terminated when I discovered she was stealing company secrets and selling them to competitors. But Miss Turner's background is irrelevant. Her actions speak louder than her bank account. While others were plotting to destroy my company, she was using her resources to help strangers in need. I judge people by their hearts, not their net worth. After the conference, they retreated to his penthouse, exhausted but united. The city sparkled below them as they stood on the balcony, holding each other against the storm of public opinion. Regrets? He asked softly. Only one, she replied, then kissed him with a passion that spoke of defiance and devotion combined. That it took a test to show you what was right in front of you all along. As they watched the news coverage together, Denise noticed something that made her blood run cold. In the background of Amanda's interview, she could see documents on the table that looked suspiciously like Richard's private business contracts. The loyalty test was never about 6 women and credit cards. It was about one woman's plan to steal an empire, and she'd been playing the long game for years. The conference room felt like a war zone as Richard spread out evidence of Amanda's deception. Contracts, bank transfers, recorded conversations, each document a bullet aimed at his heart. She's been planning this for 18 months, Richard said, his voice hollow with betrayal. The engagement, the relationship, all of it was cover for corporate espionage on a massive scale. Denise studied the papers spread across the mahogany table. Bank statements showing regular payments from Henderson Hotels to an offshore account. Copies of Richard's private business strategies with Henderson's logo stamped in the corner. Meeting schedules that lined up perfectly with Amanda's supposed charity events. Look at this, she said, pointing to a series of emails. She wasn't just stealing information. She was feeding Henderson our expansion plans, our investor meetings, our acquisition targets. They've been staying one step ahead because she was giving them our playbook. Marcus Chun, Richard's head of security, looked grim as he added his findings to the pile. It gets worse. Rebecca wasn't just Amanda's accomplice. She was Henderson's inside woman first. She got the assistant job specifically to access your files. Amanda was recruited later. Recruited how? Richard asked. Henderson approached her after your third date. Offered her $10 million and an executive position if she could get inside your business operations long enough to steal your expansion plans for the European market. The betrayal cut deeper than any business loss could. Richard had trusted Amanda with his secrets, his plans, his heart. He'd been planning to propose to her on New Year's Eve, had already bought a ring that cost more than most people's houses. The loyalty test, Denise said suddenly, pieces clicking together in her mind. When did you first mention it to Marcus on the phone? 3 weeks ago. What? Amanda knew about it before you told us. She mentioned details you hadn't shared yet. Marcus nodded grimly. Your office is bugged. Has been for months. Every private conversation, every strategy session, every vulnerable moment. She heard it all. What's worse, being betrayed by someone you loved or discovering they never loved you at all? How do you rebuild trust after that kind of deception? Richard sank into his chair, the weight of deception crushing down on him. 2 years of my life. I was going to marry her. Denise moved behind his chair, her hands settling on his shoulders. The touch was gentle but grounding, reminding him that not everyone in his life was false. She never deserved you, Denise said simply. Someone who could plan that kind of betrayal for money was never capable of real love anyway. How did I miss it? How did I not see what she really was? Because you're a good person who assumes other people are good too. That's not a flaw, Richard. That's what makes you worth loving. Marcus cleared his throat. There's more. Jessica and Claire weren't involved in the corporate espionage, but Amanda paid them to help discredit any woman who got too close to you. They were supposed to make sure no one else could win the loyalty test. Except they didn't count on Denise, Richard said, turning in his chair to look at her. They didn't count on someone who couldn't be bought or manipulated or scared away, or someone who'd risk everything to protect you, she replied, her hand finding his. The moment was interrupted by Marcus's phone buzzing. He answered, listened, then hung up with a curse. What? Richard asked. Amanda's not done. She just accessed your private safe, the one in your penthouse study. Richard's face went white. The Henderson acquisition contracts are in there. If she gets those to them before our board meeting tomorrow, your company will be worthless, Marcus finished. As they prepared to confront Amanda with the evidence, Richard's security called with urgent news. Amanda had just accessed his private safe. She wasn't just stealing his business. She'd taken something that could destroy his entire family legacy. She'd spent 48 hours learning to give everything away. Now she had 48 minutes to help him fight for everything that mattered. The elevator climbed toward the penthouse showdown as Denise squeezed Richard's hand, both knowing that in minutes they'd either save his empire or watch it crumble together. The contracts in that safe aren't just about business, Richard explained as they rose through the building. My father's acquisition of the Henderson properties in 1987, there was something questionable about how he obtained them. If Amanda has those documents, she can destroy your entire family legacy, Denise finished, and probably send me to prison for fraud, even though I had nothing to do with it. The elevator dinged softly as they reached the penthouse floor. Marcus and his security team flanked them, all of them tense with the knowledge that Amanda was cornered and dangerous. Remember, Richard said quietly to Denise, whatever happens up there, I need you to know that meeting you, loving you, it's been the most real thing in my life. Don't talk like this is goodbye. If this goes wrong, she silenced him with a kiss, fierce and full of determination. We're going to win, because we're fighting for truth, and truth is stronger than lies. When you're fighting for someone you love, what gives you courage? Is it knowing they do the same for you? Share what partnership means to you. The penthouse doors opened to reveal Amanda, waiting in the living room. No longer the elegant socialite, but a predator backed into a corner. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smudged, and her eyes held the wild gleam of someone who'd gambled everything and lost. Richard, she said, her voice honey-sweet despite the desperation underneath. I was wondering when you'd show up. Give me the documents, Amanda. Which documents? Her smile was razor-sharp. I've taken so many over the past 2 years. The Henderson files from my father's acquisition. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Amanda laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. Those old things? I'm sure I don't know what you mean. But Denise noticed something Amanda hadn't counted on. In her haste to access the safe, she'd scattered papers across Richard's desk, and among them were photocopies of documents that should have been originals. She doesn't have them, Denise said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. Look at the papers on the desk. Those are copies, not originals. She couldn't get into the safe. Richard moved to his desk and examined the scattered documents. His face broke into the first genuine smile Denise had seen in days. My father was paranoid about those documents. The safe in this penthouse only has copies. The originals are in a safety deposit box that requires both my signature and a key that's been in my family for 30 years. Amanda's face went white, then red with fury. You think you've won? You have no idea what's coming for you. Marcus stepped forward with handcuffs. Amanda Wellington, you're under arrest for corporate espionage, theft, and fraud. As security escorted Amanda away, she turned back with a smile that chilled everyone in the room. You think this is over? The real game hasn't even started yet. Check your accounts, Richard. But Denise was already moving, her laptop open, fingers flying across the keyboard. Her years of watching Richard's business from the outside had taught her more than she'd realized. She's trying to transfer money from your personal accounts, she said, her voice tight with concentration. But she needs two-factor authentication that goes to your phone. Richard pulled out his phone just as it started buzzing with security alerts. Block everything, he told her. Change all the passwords. Working together, they systematically locked Amanda out of every system she'd try to access. It was like watching a master thief trying to break into a house while the owners changed all the locks in real time. 20 minutes later, they'd secured everything. Amanda's final gambit had failed. As the adrenaline faded and the penthouse grew quiet, Richard pulled Denise into his arms. We did it, he whispered against her hair. We did it together. As the penthouse doors opened to reveal Amanda, waiting with lawyers and contracts, Denise stepped forward with evidence that would not only stop the takeover, but reveal a secret about Amanda that no one saw coming. The woman who'd played the perfect fiancée for 2 years had been someone else entirely, and the truth about her identity would shock everyone, including her co-conspirators. Amanda's perfect composure cracked like expensive porcelain as her true identity unfolded before the room. Not the socialite heiress she claimed to be, but a corporate spy who'd infiltrated Richard's life with surgical precision. Her real name is Sarah Mitchell, Marcus announced, reading from a file he'd compiled over the past week. She's not from old money. She grew up in Detroit, graduated from community college, and has been working corporate infiltration jobs for the past 8 years. Amanda, or Sarah, stood in the center of the penthouse living room, no longer bothering to maintain her elegant facade. The southern accent she'd cultivated was gone, replaced by flat Midwestern vowels. You think you're so smart, she sneered at Richard. You never suspected a thing. 2 years of playing the perfect fiancé, listening to you bore me with your business problems, pretending to care about your pathetic emotional needs. The cruelty in her voice hit Richard like a physical blow, but Denise stepped closer to him, her presence a shield against the poison Amanda was spitting. The charity events you attended together? Marcus continued reading. She was photographing guest lists and donor information for Henderson's client database. The romantic weekend trips? She was stealing data from your laptop while you slept. Richard's jaw tightened. The nights you said you were working late on wedding planning. I was in Henderson's offices, copying your files and planning your destruction. Amanda's smile was vicious with satisfaction. Did you really think I enjoy playing house with you? You're old, you're boring, and you're about to be poor. Have you ever discovered someone you thought you knew was completely different? How did it change your ability to trust? What helped you heal? But here's what you didn't count on, Denise said, stepping forward with a folder of her own. I used to clean Henderson's offices too before I started working for Richard. I still have friends there. Amanda's confident expression flickered. When I heard about the conspiracy, I made some calls. Your handler at Henderson? James Morrison? He's been recording every conversation you've had for the past 6 months. Insurance, he called it. Denise opened the folder and pulled out transcripts that made Amanda's face go white. Listen to this, Denise read. Richard is completely clueless. He actually thinks I love him. When this is over, I want him destroyed completely. His business, his reputation, his spirit. I want him to lose everything. The words hung in the air like poison. Richard had known Amanda was betraying him for business reasons, but hearing the personal hatred in her own words was devastating. Or how about this one? Denise continued. The loyalty test is perfect. I'll make sure all the women except me fail spectacularly. Then I'll swoop in as the only loyal one, and he'll never suspect I'm the real traitor. Where did you get those? Amanda demanded. Henderson threw you under the bus the minute they realized you'd been caught, Marcus said. They're claiming they never authorized personal attacks, only business intelligence gathering. You're going down alone. The other women, Jessica, Claire, Rebecca, and Sophia, all stared at Amanda with horror. They thought they were part of some elaborate romantic test, not a criminal conspiracy. You used us, Claire whispered. You made us accessories to corporate espionage, Rebecca added, her voice shaking. Ladies, Marcus said, you'll need to give statements, but our investigation shows you were manipulated, not complicit. Amanda looked around the room at the ruins of her perfect plan, her mask finally completely gone. You think you've won? I've destroyed his reputation. His business is crippled, and now everyone knows he's sleeping with the help. Actually, Richard said quietly, our stock price has recovered. It turns out investors respect a CEO who can uncover corporate espionage and protect his assets. And as for Denise, he took her hand, raising it to his lips. She's not the help. She's my partner. As security escorted Amanda away, she turned back with a smile that chilled everyone in the room. You think this is over? The real game hasn't even started yet. Check your accounts, Richard. They'd won the battle, but the war had left casualties. Now they had to rebuild an empire and decide what kind of legacy they wanted to leave. The boardroom that once echoed with betrayal now hummed with hope as Richard and Denise presented their vision for a company that would make money and meaning in equal measure. 3 weeks had passed since Amanda's arrest, and the dust was finally settling. The media had moved on to other scandals. The stock price had stabilized, and Richard's board of directors had voted unanimously to support his leadership through the crisis. But success felt different now. Sitting in strategy meetings, Richard found himself asking new questions. Not just will this make money, but will this make the world better? It was Denise's influence, though she'd never admit it. She'd joined the company officially as Director of Community Relations, a position Richard had created specifically for her skills in connecting business success with social impact. The Detroit expansion isn't just about profit margins, she explained to the board, her voice steady despite being the only person in the room without an MBA. We can partner with local schools, provide job training programs, and source from community businesses. The hotel becomes a catalyst for neighborhood revitalization. Richard watched her command the room with quiet authority and felt his chest tighten with pride. The woman who used to clean these floors was now reshaping the entire company's philosophy. The initial investment is higher, board member Patricia Williams noted. But the long-term returns are better, Richard added. Community goodwill, employee loyalty, brand reputation. They're assets that compound over time. After the meeting, they stayed behind to review expansion plans, working side by side at the conference table where Amanda had once plotted his destruction. You realize what you've done, don't you? Richard asked, setting down architectural plans for the Chicago property. Help you plan a hotel renovation. Changed everything about how I think about business, about life, about what success actually means. She looked up from the community partnership proposals spread before her. You were already changing. I just helped you see what was already inside you. What would you do if you had the chance to rebuild something completely? What values would guide your decisions? Share your vision for second chances. The man who created that loyalty test was looking for someone to trust. But you taught me that trust isn't something you test for. It's something you build together. Their working relationship had evolved into something deeper than romance. They were true partners now, each making the other stronger. Where he brought business acumen and strategic thinking, she brought heart and community connection. Where she sometimes doubted her place in his world, he provided unwavering support and belief in her abilities. I've been thinking about the foundation, she said, referring to their plans for a charitable organization funded by company profits. What about it? I want to focus on education and job training. Programs that help people build real careers, not just survive. She paused, her voice getting softer. Programs I wish had existed when I was 18 and aging out of foster care. Richard reached across the table and took her hand. Whatever you want to do, we'll make it happen. This foundation, this company, this life, it's ours now. Equal partners in everything. The kiss that followed was interrupted by the sound of Richard's assistant rushing in with urgent news. Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's been a development with Amanda's case. She's escaped federal custody. Richard felt Denise's hand tighten in his. Escaped how? Transport vehicle was hit by a coordinated attack. 3 agents injured. Amanda's gone. But sir, there's more. She left behind a message. The assistant handed over a note written in Amanda's perfect handwriting. Tell Denise Turner that some games never end. I'll be seeing her soon. The foundation plans scattered to the floor as Denise went pale. She's coming for me, she whispered. She's coming for both of us, Richard corrected grimly. But this time we'll be ready. As they finalized plans for the company's new direction, Richard's assistant rushed in with news that stopped them cold. Amanda had escaped federal custody, and she'd left behind a message specifically for Denise. The woman who'd spent her life being invisible was now the target of someone who'd stop at nothing to destroy the love that had ruined her perfect plan. The safe house overlooked the ocean where waves crashed against rocks like Amanda's rage against their happiness. Relentless, but ultimately powerless against something stronger. She knows where you live, where you work, where you volunteer, FBI agent Sarah Chan explained as she reviewed security footage from Amanda's escape. The attack on the transport vehicle was planned months in advance. She had help, resources, and a very specific target. Denise sat on the couch in the Montauk safe house, staring at the message Amanda had left. Some games never end. The words felt like ice in her veins. Why me? She asked for what felt like the 100th time. Her fight is with Richard. Because you represent everything her plan failed to account for, Agent Chen replied. Genuine goodness, authentic love, the possibility that Richard could find happiness with someone real instead of someone manufactured. Richard paced the living room like a caged animal, his phone pressed to his ear as he coordinated with security teams across 3 states. I don't care what it costs. Find her before she gets anywhere near Denise. But Denise had made a decision that would terrify him. No, she said quietly, standing up from the couch. All conversation in the room stopped. No more running. No more hiding. She wants to face me? Fine. Let's end this. Richard ended his call and crossed to her in 3 quick strides. Absolutely not. You're not bait in some trap. I'm not bait. I'm someone who's tired of letting other people's hatred control my life. Her voice was steady, resolved. Amanda's power comes from fear and manipulation. What happens when she faces someone who refuses to be afraid? When someone threatens what you love most, do you run or fight? What gives you the courage to stand up to bullies? Share your stories of standing strong. She's dangerous, Denise. Desperate people do desperate things. And strong people do strong things. She took his hands, grounding both of them. I've been running from people like Amanda my whole life. People who thought I wasn't worth basic respect, who treated me like I was invisible. But I'm not invisible anymore. I'm not powerless anymore. Agent Shin looked between them. What exactly are you proposing? A meeting. Controlled environment, full security backup, but face to face. She wants to destroy what Richard and I have. Let her try to do it while looking me in the eyes. The plan took shape over the next 6 hours. Amanda had been sending messages through intermediaries. She wanted to meet at Richard's penthouse, the scene of her original crime. Midnight, alone except for Richard and Denise. It's obviously a trap, Marcus warned as they reviewed security arrangements. Of course it is, Richard replied. But it's our trap now. The penthouse had been transformed into a fortress. Every entrance monitored, every room swept for explosives, sharpshooters positioned on neighboring buildings. But inside, it looked exactly as it had the night Amanda's lies began to unravel. As 11:30 approached, Richard and Denise stood together in the living room where so much had changed. Regrets? He asked, echoing their conversation from weeks earlier. Only one, she replied. That it took this long to realize my own worth. He kissed her then, soft and desperate, and full of everything they might lose in the next hour. Whatever happens, he whispered against her lips, you've already won. You turned a broken man into someone who believes in love again. We turned each other into something better. At 11:59, the elevator chimed. The call came at 3 a.m. Amanda had been spotted at the original testing location, Richard's penthouse, with something that looked suspiciously like explosives. She was forcing one final confrontation. The penthouse where 6 women's choices had revealed everything would witness one final test. This time between love and revenge, truth and destruction. The same room where black credit cards had started everything now glittered with broken glass and police lights as the final chapter of Amanda's deception played out against the Manhattan skyline. Amanda stood in the center of the living room, wearing clothes Denise had never seen before, black tactical gear that made her look like a different person entirely, which Denise supposed she was. You came, Amanda said, her voice eerily calm. I wasn't sure you'd have the courage. Here I am, Denise replied, stepping forward while Richard stayed protectively close. What do you want, Amanda? Sarah. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I want you to understand what you've cost me. She gestured around the penthouse with theatrical flourish. 2 years of my life. $1 million payday. My reputation in a very specialized field. You cost yourself all of that when you chose greed over truth. Amanda laughed, but the sound was empty of humor. Truth? You want to talk about truth? The truth is that you're a nobody who got lucky. A janitor who happened to be in the right place at the right time. Maybe, but I'm a nobody who chose to help people instead of hurting them. And look where it got you. Hiding in safe houses, living in fear, knowing that your fairy tale romance has made you a target for the rest of your life. Richard stepped forward. Enough. You want revenge? Take it out on me. I'm the one who exposed your plan. Oh, Richard. Still trying to be the hero. Amanda pulled something from her jacket. Not a weapon, but a tablet showing financial records. Did you think I came here to hurt you? Physical violence is so pedestrian. She tapped the screen and numbers began changing. Bank accounts, investment portfolios, business holdings. I've spent the past 3 weeks learning everything about your precious janitor's background. Did you know she has student loans from a college she never finished? Medical bills from foster care? A credit history that reads like a disaster novel. Denise felt her chest tighten. Those old debts were her secret shame, the evidence of every time life had knocked her down before she'd learned to fight back. So, Richard asked, his voice dangerous. So, I bought every single one of those debts. Every medical bill, every defaulted payment, every mark against her credit. As of today, Denise Turner owes me $847,000, and I'm calling in every penny. What's stronger, love built on truth or schemes built on lies? When you've seen someone at their worst and best, what does that teach you about forever? The room went silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant sounds of the city below. Then Denise started laughing. The sound was so unexpected that even Amanda looked surprised. You bought my old debts, Denise said, still chuckling. You spent weeks researching my financial history, tracking down collection agencies, probably paying premium prices for worthless paper. Those debts are legally binding, and I can pay them off tonight, Richard interrupted, pulling out his phone. Every single penny with interest right now. Amanda's confident expression flickered. That's not the point. Actually, it is exactly the point, Denise said. You thought my past was something shameful I was hiding from Richard, but he already knows about every single one of those debts. I told him myself. Richard nodded. Last week, actually, we were planning how to handle them together. You see, Amanda, Denise continued, that's what real love looks like. Transparency, partnership, supporting each other instead of trying to destroy each other. Amanda stared at them for a long moment, her perfect plan crumbling around her once again. This isn't over, she said finally. Yes, it is, Agent Chun said from the doorway, flanked by federal marshals. Sarah Mitchell, you're under arrest. Again. As Amanda was led away in handcuffs, she shouted one last revelation that made everyone freeze. Ask him about the real reason he chose you six. Ask him what he was really testing. Richard's face went pale. The loyalty test had hidden a deeper secret, one that would either destroy their love or prove it was destined from the moment they first met. The sunrise painted the penthouse in shades of gold and possibility as Richard told her the truth he'd hidden even from himself, that the test wasn't about loyalty to him, but about finding someone worthy of his loyalty in return. Amanda was right about one thing, Richard said quietly, his hands shaking as he poured coffee in the penthouse kitchen. The federal agents had finally left, taking with them the last remnants of Amanda's failed revenge plot. Denise looked up from the couch where she'd been trying to process everything that had happened. What do you mean? The loyalty test. There was more to it than I told you. More than I told anyone. Something in his voice made her stomach clench with dread. After everything they'd been through, what secret could he still be hiding? I didn't choose you six women randomly, he continued, not meeting her eyes. I had Marcus investigate each of you first. Background checks, financial records, personal histories. The coffee mug slipped from Denise's fingers, hitting the marble floor with a crash that echoed through the silent apartment. You investigated me? I knew about your foster care background, your student loans, the medical bills from when you were hospitalized after aging out of the system. His voice was barely above a whisper. I knew you volunteer at shelters on weekends. I knew you sent half your paycheck to help your former foster siblings. Have you ever discovered that what you thought was the whole story was just the beginning? That someone's actions had deeper meaning than you realized? Share those revelations. Denise stood up slowly, her mind racing. How long have you known? 8 months. Ever since you stayed late to clean blood out of the carpet after that investor had a heart attack in my office. You were so gentle with his wife, so calm in the crisis. I started noticing you after that night. Noticing me enough to have me investigated like a criminal. No, he said quickly, finally looking at her. Noticing you enough to realize I was falling in love with someone I barely knew. The investigation wasn't about finding dirt on you, Denise. It was about understanding how someone could be so genuinely good in a world full of people trying to use me. The words hung between them like a bridge she wasn't sure she wanted to cross. The other women, she said slowly. Did you investigate them too? Of course. Amanda's background check showed some inconsistencies, but I dismissed them because I thought I loved her. Rebecca had financial problems that made her vulnerable to outside influence. The others all had histories of using relationships for personal gain. And me, you were the opposite of everything I expected. Every person I interviewed about you said the same things. Kind, hardworking, someone who helped others even when she had nothing to give. He stepped closer, but didn't try to touch her. The test wasn't about proving your loyalty to me, Denise. It was about proving I was worthy of someone like you. The confession hit her like a physical force. All this time, she thought the test was about her proving herself to him, but he'd been trying to prove himself worthy of her love. You could have told me. Would you have believed me? A billionaire saying he was falling for his janitor because she was too good for him? She thought about it honestly. 3 months ago, if Richard Calloway had approached her with that story, she would have laughed or assumed it was some cruel joke. The ring, she said suddenly, remembering Amanda's final taunt. Richard's face went pale. What ring? Amanda said something about you buying a ring months before the test. She was lying, wasn't she? He walked to his desk and opened the bottom drawer, pulling out a small velvet box that made Denise's breath catch. I bought this the day after the heart attack incident, before I knew anything about you, except that you had the most beautiful heart I'd ever witnessed. He opened the box to reveal a simple solitaire diamond that caught the morning light perfectly. I've been carrying it around for months, waiting for the courage to tell you how I felt. Richard, the loyalty test was my coward's way of trying to create a situation where we might end up together naturally. I never expected you to spend every penny helping strangers. I never expected to fall even deeper in love watching you change the world with my money. He got down on one knee right there in his destroyed penthouse, surrounded by the remnants of Amanda's final attack. Denise Turner, Will you marry a man who was stupid enough to take 8 months to tell you he loved you? The answer came without hesitation, despite everything. Yes. The test had revealed 6 women's hearts. But the real prize was never about what they bought with his money, but what they built with his love. The same community center where she'd once volunteered now bore a plaque with both their names. Not because of his money, but because of her heart and his willingness to see it, follow it, and serve it. 6 months later, Denise stood in a place that had once represented everything she couldn't have. Richard's penthouse, but now it felt like home. The morning sun streamed through windows that had witnessed betrayal and heartbreak, conspiracy and revelation. But today they framed something entirely different. Hope. The Detroit project is ahead of schedule, she told Richard as they reviewed construction photos over breakfast. The job training center opens next month, and we already have 200 applications. And the scholarship program? Fully funded for the next 5 years. 50 kids who might not have had a chance at college now have full rides. She smiled, setting down her coffee, including 3 from my old foster care group home. The transformation had been remarkable. What started as a loyalty test had become something neither of them had imagined. A partnership that was reshaping not just their lives, but entire communities. Richard's hotels now operated on what they called the Denise model. Every property had to contribute meaningfully to its local community through job training, educational partnerships, or social services. Profit margins were slightly lower, but employee satisfaction, customer loyalty, and public reputation had soared. "I have something for you," Richard said, pulling a folder from his briefcase. Inside were legal documents that made Denise's breath catch. Incorporation papers for the Turner Calloway Foundation, with her listed as co-founder and equal partner. "Richard, this is yours, ours, whatever you want to call it." He moved around the table to stand behind her chair, his hands settling on her shoulders. $500 million in initial funding, with annual contributions tied to company profits. She turned in her chair to look at him. "You're giving me control of $500 million? I'm giving us the chance to change the world the way you changed me. So what would you have bought with unlimited money? But more importantly, what would you have done if someone saw your heart before they noticed your status? Share what this story taught you about real wealth." The wedding had been small, just 50 people in the same community center where they'd had their first real conversation away from his office. Denise had worn a simple white dress that cost less than Amanda's old shoes, and Richard had cried when she walked down an aisle decorated with flowers donated by families they'd helped. Now, as they prepared for their first board meeting as co-chairs of the foundation, Denise reflected on how much had changed since that night. She'd overheard his phone call about loyalty tests. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked, adjusting his tie in the mirror. The old life was simpler, fewer complications. "The old life was empty," he replied, catching her hands and holding them still. "Beautiful penthouse, successful business, respected name. And I was dying inside because none of it meant anything. And now I wake up every day next to someone who makes me want to be worthy of her love. We run a company that helps people instead of just extracting profit from them. We're building something that will matter long after we're gone." He kissed her softly. "Regrets? My only regret is that it took me so long to realize that the most valuable things in life aren't for sale." Their foundation's first major project was breaking ground that afternoon. A nationwide program providing job training, housing assistance, and educational support for young adults aging out of foster care. Kids just like Denise had been. As they stood together at the groundbreaking ceremony, surrounded by the young people who would benefit from their work, Richard whispered in her ear, "You know what the real loyalty test was?" "What?" "Whether I was loyal enough to my own heart to recognize love when it was cleaning my floors and changing my world one quiet act of kindness at a time." The ceremony ended with Denise addressing the crowd, her voice steady and strong as she spoke about second chances and the power of believing in people who'd been overlooked. "6 months ago," she said, "I was invisible in a world that only sees worth in wealth. Today, I stand here not because someone gave me money, but because someone saw my heart and decided it was worth protecting." She found Richard in the crowd and smiled. The most valuable currency isn't what's in your bank account. It's what's in your character. And the richest people aren't those who have the most, but those who give the most. If this story of invisible love becoming undeniable truth touched your heart, smash that like button. Subscribe for more stories that prove love isn't about what you can buy. It's about what you're willing to give. Tell me in the comments, which character's journey resonated most with you? And remember, the most valuable things in life aren't for sale, but they're always worth fighting for.